Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks so much to the witnesses for being here. I want to echo Ranking Member Nadler's comments about the timing of this hearing. It's 3 days after the anniversary of the worst terrorist attack the United States has ever seen. And this week should be a time for all of us in Congress to reflect on the impact of terrorism and what we can do to make our country safer from attacks like the one that we saw on 9/11. But this hearing is not really respecting the legacy of 9/11. Rather, scheduling this hearing for this week, the majority is using the tragedy of September 11th to justify their immigration agenda that does not solve all of the immigration issues that are before us, as my colleague, Congresswoman Escobar, laid out. And it's painful to see the legacy of 9/11 twisted in this political manner. As we've heard from Mr. Narasta, there have been no murders or injuries committed by terrorists who have illegally entered the United States through the US-Mexico border in the past 48 years. This hearing doesn't reflect that reality, nor does it provide a forum for a genuine discussion about how to make our country safer from the terrorists who are most likely to come here. If the other side wanted to do that, they'd work with us to address homegrown terrorists who have committed many of the more violent attacks in the United States, particularly recently. And if they wanted to make our country safer, they'd work with us to provide security to schools, churches, movie theaters, and keep the guns out of the hands of violent individuals with extremist belief. Mr. Narasta, could you remind the subcommittee, how did the 9/11 terrorists enter the United States?
The 19 9/11 hijackers entered lawfully. 18 of them entered on tourist visas. 1 of them entered on a student visa, and they were lawfully present at the time of the attacks.
And is entry through the southern border in any way connected to terrorist activity in the United States?
It has not been historically, and there is very little indication that it is currently.
And what is the likelihood that someone will be murdered by a foreign-born terrorist in the United States?
Based on data from 1975 through the end of 2022, the annual chance of being murdered is about 1 in 4.4 million per year. By comparison, the chance of being murdered in a non-terrorist homicide is about 1 in 20,000 per year, or about 316 times greater.
And if members of this committee want to look at the way to improve national security and terrorist threats, what would you recommend we do?
I think the number one thing to do in this scenario is to increase lawful immigration so that we can control the border. I think the other witnesses up here actually made a fantastic case for doing that when talking about the smuggling and the human rights violations and how the cartel has got their fingers dug in deep to this black market. If you don't like that, the one surefire way to get rid of it, to exclude the black market from this, is to legalize that flow so folks can come illegally. If people can buy a plane ticket from their home country and come here lawfully after being vetted, they're not gonna pay cartels $10,000 or smuggle them across a jungle and then a desert where they're gonna have a good chance of being raped or murdered, etc. The way to control and to regulate this market is through legalization. We just cannot regulate. It is impossible to regulate a black market. We need to legalize it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes